Slide 1. Welcome back. Today, I want to revisit Alfred Marshall's model of supply and demand in light of what we learned from Friedrich Hayek. Hayek pointed out that each person is unique with respect to their time and place circumstances, and no other person can know exactly what another person knows. This is particularly true when we think about how people value different things. Slide 2. Marshall represented market supply and demand as continuous functions. This approach makes the calculation of equilibrium and the use of comparative statics much easier. But it also hides the fact that the information used to construct supply and demand is distributed among all the buyers and sellers. Reservation values are private to the individual, as they reflect the individual's unique situation and desires. Slide 3. This lecture builds the market demand curve from the individual values of buyers. Slide 4. We will consider a market for wood-turned pens and look at Brian as a potential buyer. We imagine Brian will go to a particular woodturner and commission a pen from them. Brian has different reservation values for each pen as follows. The first pen has a reservation value of $9. This simply means that Brian would be willing to pay up to $9 for his first pen. Once he owns a pen, the reservation value of owning a second commission pen falls to $6, and a third pen has a reservation value of $3. This decline in reservation values reflects the fact that Brian gets less value from owning additional pens. You might wonder what if Brian values a set of pens as a collector's item. In this case, we could change the unit of goods to sets of pens and not individual pens. Note that the reservation values in our table are private information known only to Brian. Slide 5. We can graph Brian's values as the step function shown in the graph. Each step reflects an indivisible unit. In this case, a pen. Notice the step function is downward sloping. Slide 6. Given this information, we can determine how many pens Brian wants to buy at different prices. Let's try it. How many pens is Brian willing to buy at a price of $4.50 per pen? Take a minute and think about this. Slide 7. If you answered 2 pens, you are correct. Brian has 2 values above $4.50, thus, he would be willing to buy those units. Slide 8. However, at a price of $6.50, Brian has only 1 value above that price and would only be willing to buy 1 unit. Slide 9. Let's add a second potential buyer of pens. Tim has a different demand schedule as reflected by his reservation values of $8, $5, and $2. You can see Tim's graph next to Brian's. Slide 10. At the price of $5.50, how many pens are our buyers, Brian and Tim, willing to buy? Again, take a little time and think about your answer. Slide 11. If you answered 3 pens, you are correct. Brian wants 2 pens since he has 2 values above $5.50, and Tim wants 1 pen since only one of his values is above $5.50. Slide 12. We now have a graph for Brian and a graph for Tim. Is there some way we can show total willingness to buy with a single graph? The answer is to add the 2 graphs together. Let's see how we can do this. Slide 13. If we add Brian and Tim's demand graphs together, we get the market demand graph as shown on the right. But how exactly did we do this addition? Slide 14. If we take Brian and Tim's values together and sort them from highest to lowest, we get the market demand graph. Notice I have used blue and red colors to show exactly who has what values on the new step function. It's worth keeping in mind that these values are private, and actually, nobody knows the full curve. Slide 15. We can now consider a third buyer, named Kevin, who also has a demand graph for pens. These are the green values $7, $4, and $3. Slide 16. Now, how many pens will buyers be willing to buy if the price is $5.50? Take a minute and think about your answer. Slide 17. If you answered 4 pens, you are correct. Brian and Tim are willing to buy 3 pens, and Kevin is willing to buy 1 more, since Kevin has 1 reservation value above $5.50. Slide 18. Now, if we add Kevin's graph to the market demand by sorting all the buyers' reservation values from highest to lowest, we get the market demand graph as shown. I've replaced colors with letters of first names on the graph. Slide 19. That's it for the market demand. It should be obvious that we could continue to add buyers in this fashion. Just remember, each buyer's values are private, and no one actually knows the whole demand curve. Thanks for watching.